and welcome back to my desk. I have been dreading doing this after watching people's videos and seeing their pictures online about the quality of the paper in their 2025 planners. So I've been avoiding doing a pen test in my new Hobonichi products, but I went ahead and decided to finally bite the bullet and do it today, and decided to make it a whole pen test extravaganza so that I can compare to the other Tomoe River, and I also have Histology in here, papers that I have. So yeah, I've gone ahead. I used quite a wide variety of pens. I'll talk through the pens that I used. I went ahead and I've done all the tests, but I haven't looked at the results yet, so we will see those together. I used my Hobonichi 2025 Uni Jetstream here. When I go for a gel pen, I tend to like to use the Pilot G2 in 0.38, so I used that as well. And then occasionally I like to use, I have a set of the Zebra Sarasa clips in 05 in the vintage colorway, so I grabbed one of those to try. I do sometimes use the Pigma Microns, so I got an 08 and an 01 to try, because those are the two that I use the most often. And then I tried all three of my fountain pens. So for the first one, it's a Lamy Safari, extra fine, and it is currently inked with Diamine Earl Grey. I have a TWSBI Diamond 580, also in extra fine, and it is currently inked with the Birmingham Pen Company ink. It's supposed to be Tesla coil. I think they actually put the wrong ink in the bottle because it doesn't look how I expected it to, but I still like it, and so I never reached out to the company. But yeah, that's in there. And then the last fountain pen I have is a Kaweco in an extra fine again, and it is currently inked with the Diamine Aurora Borealis. Other than that, when I'm doing decorating, I sometimes use the Tombow Fudonosuke brush pens. So I've got the soft tip and the hard tip that I tested. I use the Crayola Super Tips. So I tried to generally choose a light color and a dark color. Occasionally I will use the Zebra Mild liners, and so again I tried to choose a light color and a darker color. And then lastly, I have a few of the Tombow dual brush pens. They're all in light colors. I don't have any dark colors of this, so I only tested one of those. So let's just dive right in. We'll start with Histology. So here's my pen test, and overall it's pretty good. The Earl Grey in my Lamy has a little bit of bleed through, as does the Tombow soft tip. I expect this to bleed through almost everything though. I don't know if I just got an extra juicy one or what, but it bleeds through almost anything. I don't actually use it that often for that reason. The darker mild liner also bled through a little bit, but otherwise it's good. And this is, the Histology paper I don't think of as being as high quality as the Tomoe River paper, so this is about what I would have expected to see. Let's look at another A6 size book. This is an Ara Estelle and Annie Plans from 2023. I believe this does have the Sanzin paper in it. And I remember when I did my original pen test in this book being kind of disappointed in the paper because a lot of things bled through that I didn't expect to bleed through. But it was actually quite a nice writing experience using this paper. So maybe it was one of those cases I never paid super close attention because I picked a pen that worked well, and that's all that I used in this, but maybe it was one of those cases where some of the pages were good and some were not, because I know some people have had that experience. And yeah, looking at this, that kind of confirms what I said. Again, there's maybe a tiny bit of bleed through on the darker red mild liner and just a little bit on the Tombow soft tip. And even in the Pilot, there's a tiny, I guess it's not quite to bleeding through, but it has sort of bled into the paper some. So yeah, not great, but definitely better than the Stology paper for reference. Let's pull that back up. Yeah, so definitely better than the Stology paper. Hopefully you can see that. Which this I was expecting to be pretty bad, so that gives me some confidence moving forward. I'm going to continue with this stack and sort of move myself this way. So this is a weekly diary from Sweet Freckled Designs. It was also purchased in 2022 to be used in 2023. And is, I believe, also the Sanzin paper. This paper I do notice is not as nice to write on, but I typically just use a micron in 01 for almost all of my writing in this, and that works well. So let's see how this looks. Wow, this is even better. Like, again, just a tiny, tiny bit on that red mild liner, but nothing else, no other bleed through. So this does reconfirm what I saw. Let's open this back up. In my very first pin test, when I tested these two books, I did think that the paper in this one was better than the paper in this one. And there's not a huge difference, but this one definitely, there's basically no bleed through at all, except for at the very end with that mild liner, whereas there are a couple of spaces on this one with bleed through. Okay, continuing on. I'm still nervous to get here. So this is a Hobonichi Weeks from 2023. This has the old Tomoe River paper. So, and this is just a dream to write in. I absolutely love this paper. But yeah, so let's find my pen test here. And yeah, this was just absolutely wonderful to write on. And no bleed through at all, which I wouldn't have expected there to be any. So not even that Crayola, which has bled through on everything else. So right now, these are our two best, and the old Tomoe River is just slightly better in that the red didn't bleed through. Although looking at them side by side, there might be slightly less ghosting. The ghosting is slightly less noticeable on this paper than this one, which makes sense because I've heard that the Hobonichi paper is slightly thinner. It's not 52 GSM. Now that I'm looking a little bit closer, it does look like the Pilot has sort of bled into the paper. It's not bleeding through at all, but it's just very dark right there. But yeah, so that is your typical old Tomoe River paper. Now let's get into my B6 collection. So these are all my B6 books. And we'll start with, again, another Ara Estelle and Annie plans. This is the B6 that I'm currently using as a journal. And this one was noticeably less comfortable to write in. But, I'll say that as I was doing all of these, I didn't notice any feathering on any of them, but definitely some paper felt like writing on sandpaper, essentially, and others didn't. And it's funny because when I feel the page, the paper feels really smooth, but when I'm writing, it literally feels like I'm writing on sandpaper in this notebook. But I have just gotten used to it, and I really enjoy using this book, so yeah. And yeah, so this is, I would say, pretty comparable to the Sweet Freckled Designs, in that the mild liner is starting to bleed through just a little bit, and it looks like the soft tip is trying to, but not quite. Same with the Pilot, it's trying to, but it hasn't quite made it all the way through. So I would say these two are pretty comparable. I will say that because the grid on this is a lot lighter than the grid on this, I think the ghosting is more noticeable. I don't think it's actually any darker. It's just that because the grid is not as visible, it's not distracting from the ghosting quite as much. But yeah, these are pretty similar. This is maybe a little bit better, but this is certainly better than this. Okay, let's move on to the common planner. So this was my common planner in 2023, and this paper was extremely nice. I don't know if this was the old Tomoe River paper, but this is what made me fall in love with Tomoe River paper, because I was using this all the time. The paper is so smooth, it's so nice to write on. I would say it is comparable to this guy, so I don't know if this is the Sands and paper or if this was the old Tomoe River paper, but to me, this of all of my journals and planners feels the most similar to this, which I know is the old Tomoe River paper. So, flip too many pages. Let's, the pages are stuck together. Give me just a minute. Okay, there we go. So this is what that looks like here. And yeah, essentially no bleed through, just a tiny bit on the mild liner and nothing else. So yeah, I think that confirms for me that this is likely the old Tomoe River paper, because yeah, it looks very similar to this. Okay, I've got one other sort of wild card, which is again another Ara Estelle planner, but this is actually 68 GSM paper, which is lovely because the ghosting is not quite as bad. And this one is definitely nicer paper to use than my other Ara Estelle planners. This one, the paper, it feels smooth, but it also feels smooth when I write on it. So let's look at that. And yeah, pretty similar. No real bleed through except for maybe a tiny dot here on the Tombow soft tip and a little bit on the mild liner. So those are clearly my problem childs. But you can maybe see here the difference, or actually let me compare to the other Ara Estelle so that the grid and everything else is similar. You can tell that or maybe you can tell that the ghosting is significantly less in the one here, because it's the thicker paper, and I can also see that there's slightly less bleed through. Okay, the moment has come to actually look at my new Hobonichis. So we'll start with the A6 Hon, and here we go. I'm so nervous, just because like it was horrifying, some of the results I was seeing in other people's videos. But yeah, so let's see. Okay, so I meant to go one page further so that this didn't go into the timetable, but that's fine. Yeah, similar results to what I was seeing before. So the mild liner is bleeding through a little bit. The Tombow soft tip is trying to bleed through. I don't think this is bleed through. I think that's just a mark on the page. It feels like there's something on there. Anyway, so those two are problem childs everywhere. I would say this is very comparable to like the Sweet Freckled Designs, for example, how it performed, or even the, no, it's better than that. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. It seems pretty similar to some of my other journals that I'm pretty sure have the Sands and paper. So I don't think that this book, at least, is part of the bad batch. Especially because the Lamy Earl Grey, which is right here, has not bled through, and that did bleed through on, say, the Stology paper here, which I think would say is the lowest quality paper of all of these. And was it trying to bleed through here? No. Yeah. So that's good news. I can work with this. Okay. We're one for one. Let's see if we can get lucky a second time. So here's my weeks. Okay, beautiful. Again, okay, good. I did it properly this time. Okay, similar. So the Tombow is peeking through, the red mild liner is peeking through. Even the hard tip is just a tiny bit, but it's not too bad. And then this 08 micron actually is a little bit, but all in all, not too bad. I would say that this is definitely not as good as this one. There's a little bit more bleed through on the pen test in the weeks than there is in my A6. However, that could also just be differences in pressure and things. I did these all back to back to back, but so I tried to keep things as consistent as possible, but you never know. So yeah, I think, let's compare this to the old Tomoe River paper. And it's gonna make me sad, but yeah. So again, this was the 2023 Hobonichi weeks, and this is the current one. The paper also looks a little bit lighter to me, which I'm team cream. I like the cream colored paper, and maybe it's just in my head, but it does look like the new paper is a tiny bit lighter, and less yellow than the old paper. And yeah, you can see there's definitely more bleed through, but honestly, I plan to primarily use my gel pens, which are both fine, and my fountain pens, all of which are fine in this book. So that should be good. I guess I should note that I cannot use this red mild liner, and I might want to test all of my mild liners so that I know which work and which don't. Okay, lastly is this guy, and I heard that some of these have the old paper, so I'm curious to see if mine is one of them. So again, just on the last page here, this one did feel really nice to write in, and the paper feels noticeably smoother and softer. And yeah, okay, yeah, this is 100% the old paper because none of these are bleeding through at all. Okay, great. So that's really exciting to know that this is the old paper, and it almost makes me want to go on and purchase another one or two or three or five so that I have them and just stock up on them because, oh, that's so beautiful. There's no bleed through at all. No bleed through at all. Yeah, so this is definitely the old Tomoe River paper based off of this test, which is not scientific at all, just because it compares pretty similarly to, it performed very similarly, actually a little bit better because this one, the pilot is just barely starting to peek through, and this one, not at all. But yeah, okay, so that's exciting. This old Tomoe River paper, I love it. I might have to buy more. um, my weeks could be better, but it'll work. I mean, I'm comparing to the Sweet Freckle designs here, and it's definitely worse. It's definitely worse. Is this as bad as some of the people who I've been seeing? No, especially because this is still fountain pen friendly. All of my fountain pens are completely fine. They didn't bleed through at all. They didn't feather at all on this paper. So I don't know. But compared to, say, my current journal, it's pretty similar. Maybe a little bit worse, but pretty similar. Bleeding through at the end of the soft tip, bleeding through at the mild liner. The bleeding looks a little bit worse, but pretty similar. This I'm fairly confident is the Sans and Paper, so I think it's pretty typical of the Sans and Paper. This is Sans and Paper, I believe, and it's looking pretty much the same. So yeah, I'm gonna just one more time look through this one because I've looked through everything else a second time. Yeah, and I think I can conclude that this is likely the old paper as well, which is why I like it so much. And this makes so much more sense because I really enjoyed using this book. I really enjoyed using this book. Both of these have the old Tomoe River paper. I came to enjoy using this book, but I hated it at first, and I mostly came to enjoy it because I got to a point where I was like, you know what, it doesn't matter. It's a bad, like, if you watch Seaweed Kisses, she talks about using her moleskins, and part of that is knowing that it's a bad quality paper, so it gives you some like freedom to just be messy and do stuff. And I kind of had that experience with this planner, and I'm having a very similar experience with this one. That was our little exploration. I'm super excited about this. Oh, I cannot tell you how excited I am about that. And we're going to make these work. We're going to make these work. I am slightly disappointed, I guess. Like, it'll be fine. I'm slightly disappointed that there was a tiny bit of bleed through. Oh my gosh, these pages are sticking together so badly. And that there is a tiny bit of bleed through here. But overall, this is pretty good. This is actually better than the Weeks. So if any of mine are part of the bad batch, which they may be, I know I saw, and the one I was most shocked by were people's results with the Zig clean color dots markers, but I don't have any of those. So I don't know how that would be, but yeah, this is definitely worse than this. Again, it could be a multitude of reasons why. Both of them held up fine to the fountain pen. I do plan on doing a lot of creative journaling in this one, so I will be using my markers and things a bit more in this because it's my journal. So I'm a little bit disappointed that this red mild liner is peeking through a little bit, but I think we can make this work. We can work with this. So hopefully you found that helpful. Maybe not at all, because most of these books are not books that you will have, but I can say that at least for me, things are okay. Things are okay. This is amazing. These are okay. They will work. They could be better. They will work. But yeah, so that's something, maybe something useful that I can leave you with is if you're familiar with the Stology paper and you know how that performs. At least for me, my 2025 Hobonichis performed slightly better. Not significantly better, but slightly better than that. So yeah, anyway, I've got to clean up this mess, but thank you for spending, oh Lord, almost a half an hour with me looking through all of these pin tests. I definitely learned something, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.